Hi, and welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, we are going to talk about the inspection process. So to me, the inspection process is probably the most important, and this is going to be a little bit different today than we've talked about things in the past. So let me show you our inspection addendum. So this is the property inspections addendum. When we go to write your offer, we're going to complete this unless for some reason you are completely waiving inspections and buying the house completely as is. That is not something that I'm going to recommend for you. Every now and again, there may be a situation where that's in your best interest or you're comfortable with, but would say 99% of the time, I am not going to tell you to buy a house without any inspections at all. There are ways that we can still have an as is, or maybe some inspection limitations or some repair limitations without necessarily giving up that right to inspect. So let's take a look at our properties inspections addendum. Sorry, I have to make it bigger so I can read it. This is submitted with your offer, and this is what dictates what inspections are being done and within what timeline. Typically, in the way that our market's been moving, it's better to get your inspections done sooner. It's also better because that way you can have inspections done prior to your lender ordering your appraisal. So if something happens and you decide that that house isn't going to work for you, you're not paying for your appraisal as well. So people ask me, who pays for inspections? The buyers are going to pay for inspections. So whatever you decide, those are things that you're going to be paying for. And again, as we talked about in the past, they're going to cost anywhere from maybe $600 up to as much as maybe $1,500 or more, depending upon how many and what you need to have done. So we're starting with this inspection days. Typically, it's about 7 days. Again, depending on the situation, it may end up being quicker. It may end up being slower. It really just depends. And then this next section is going to tell us what inspections you want to do. So the structural and mechanical, that's our typical home inspection. That's where they're going to go through. They're going to look through the outside. They're going to look at the roof, and basically they're going to work their way from top to bottom, checking all of plumbing, electrical, appliances, things like that. The mold inspection is just for that. It's for mold. Environmental is if you're wanting to look for asbestos or if there's polybutylene piping, other things like that. This is not one that most people are requesting unless there's a particular reason. And that's something that when we're looking at the house, we can discuss further. Radon is another one of those, in my opinion, a must do. In Hartford and Cecil counties and northern Baltimore County, especially, radon levels can be higher. That doesn't mean that if you're purchasing in Anne Arundel County or Prince George's County or someplace else that it might not be there. So for the $150, $200 for the test, I just think it's definitely something that's worthwhile to be done every time. The chimney inspection, if there's a chimney and you want to have a camera inspection, this would be selected. A lot of times what the inspectors will do is they'll look at the chimney and let you know, yes, we need to inspect it further, or no, we don't. So that, that's definitely still an option though. Lead-based paint, again, if the house was built before 1978 and you have a specific concern, yes, it is absolutely something to be done. The inspector is going to be your expert with this. So that's the person that we would want to talk to about whether or not that you feel it's necessary. The wood destroying insects is another that I feel like it's a must do. This is looking for termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, other things like that that are going to destroy and eat your house. For the price of it being done, it's really important to know if you have any problems with that, especially when it comes to asking sellers for repairs. Again, the more of these things we're finding out about, the better it is for you. And then additional inspections. So let's say maybe there's a pool or a spa or some other thing in the house. Maybe they have something unique in the house that would need a different person to come in and take a look at it. That's where we're going to list that. So by initialing whichever inspections you want, that gives you the right to do those inspections and then ask for repairs. It's better to initial it and have the option to do it than to not initial it and go back and say, geez, I wish I would have done that. So if you have concerns about mold, it's absolutely worthwhile having you initial the mold inspection. If the inspector gets to the house and says, look, I don't see any reason why you would need to have this done, they can always take it off. We just can't add it in after the fact. So that's a really important thing to consider. And again, structural, mechanical, radon, wood destroying insects, I feel like are absolutely must. If there's a chimney inspection is always a great idea as well. And then these others, if there's a specific need or concern, then absolutely we would do that. If the property is on well or septic, those are different inspection addendum that we're going to take a look at. This talks about the inspection process. So you have the right to terminate. Let's say that we do your inspection and maybe it's a $50,000 repair and you say, I just don't have $50,000 right now to make this repair. I can't buy this house. You do have the right to unilaterally terminate the contract after doing inspections. Certainly we would want to consider negotiating. That's part 2 is right to negotiate with the seller. But if it's something that you just feel like you can't handle and you don't want to deal with, then that is your right. Section 2 is the right to negotiate. So by completing this property inspections addendum, this is giving us permission to then submit the property inspections notice to the seller. We're going to take a look at that separately, just so that way we can go through it now. And then when the time comes, you'll understand what that looks like. From there, we'll get the seller's response. The seller has 5 days after we deliver the property inspection and the property inspections notice to the seller for them to come back with a response. We do have to have this done by this number of days. So if this is 7 days, we need to have all of the inspections completed. We need to have the reports and we need to have the property inspection notice completed and sent to the listing agent within this number of days. So that is something to keep in mind as well. When it comes to planning, we're going to try to get these done as soon as you're under contract. After that 5 days, the seller is going to get back to us with their response. And then we have 2 days after that to go back and forth. And again, we'll look at that in just a minute. But we do have the option to go back and forth. Inspection repairs need to be done by licensed contractors. So if we ask the seller to fix something electrical, they do need to have a licensed contractor come in and do that work. Once all of the work is completed, you do have the right to do a reinspection. So you can either go in and you can inspect it on your own, or you can have the inspector who did the initial inspection come in and reinspect those items for you as well. There is a fee to do that. It's usually not too much. Normally it's about $125 to $150. That varies with inspectors, but you do have that right to do that. So let's take a look. This is the property inspection notice. So after the inspections are completed, again, if it's not an as-is situation, if there's not something else that we have put into the contract that would cause us to not use this, this is what we're going to complete. So we're going to check which inspections the repairs are associated to. So if it's the home inspection, we would check that. If the radon is high, we would check radon. If there was a problem with termites, we would check this. If there's a chimney problem, we would check that part. So we're going to specify what inspections had difficulties, and then we're going to send the seller all of those reports, full reports for them to see. We're either going to say no unsatisfactory conditions were found. So you're not asking the seller to do anything. If that's the case, we don't have to send the reports, but we do still need to check this, sign it, and send it off. If there are repairs that need to be done, we're going to send that report, and then we're going to make a list of all of the things that we're asking the seller to do in this area. It's really important when we're asking for repairs to ask for repairs, not to necessarily go back and ask for maybe some of the DIY or just some of those maintenance issues. Like caulking is a great example. Every inspection I go to, the inspector says, oh, you need to caulk the tub. The tub needs caulk. This needs to caulk around here. The windows need caulk. That's really kind of a DIY maintenance item. The other reason we don't want to ask for those smaller repairs is, let's say that the roof needs to be repaired. A roof repair is certainly going to be a bigger repair than caulking, and we don't want the seller to say, okay, I'll caulk, but I won't do the roof. So we'll talk about that more at the inspection and when you receive your inspection report, but just something, again, to kind of keep in mind. Once we send this to the seller, they have 5 days to get back from us. If the seller agrees to complete everything in there, they will check A and send it back to us, and then the process is done. They'll make those repairs. If the seller will not make any repairs, then they're going to select this one. And if the seller says, okay, we're going to correct some of the repairs, maybe we'll do 1, 2, and 3, but we won't do 4, 5, and 6. Or maybe they say, we'll do 1, 2, and 3, and we'll give you a credit of $500 to do the rest of the repairs. Then they would check these boxes. They're going to send that back to us within those 5 days. Then we're going to have 2 days to respond to them again. If you're good with what their response to this is, then we're going to check that the buyer accepts seller's response and that you're waiving any further corrective actions. If you accept their credit, then we would select B. If they said maybe they won't do anything, or you're not happy with what they're sending back, you can still terminate the contract. So we can check letter C, and then we can send a release. Or we can try to renegotiate. We can say, okay, well, if you won't do 4, 5, and 6, we want you to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, as opposed to 5 and 6. So you kind of get the idea. We're going to send this back to them within 2 days. Again, then they have the chance to respond with those same, either they accept it, they terminate it, or they counter offer with a new proposal. Then they send this back to us. So it can be very time consuming if it's going back and forth and back and forth. But again, we really, the end of this, the end result is we want you to be happy with what you're buying and what the seller's agreeing to do. So, again, it's a lot to look at and it moves quickly. So I do like for you to see it up front and know what it says. If you are buying a home that has well and septic, again, those are really must-do inspections. Well and septic repairs can be very costly, and there really isn't any way to tell whether they're working or not unless you're having them inspected. So this is for the water yield test addendum. This is saying that it needs to have a certain number of gallons that are coming out within a certain amount of time. One other thing to note, there is a dollar amount if there are things that are wrong with the well, how much the seller is agreeing to pay. Typically, this can be $1,000, $2,000, somewhere in between. Again, we can talk about that and what the circumstances are once you're under contract. The next document is within Baltimore County. So if you're buying in Baltimore County specifically, there is the well water addendum, again, talking about the yield and also talking about bacterial testing and the water quality. There's a water quality addendum that goes with this yield as well if you're outside of Baltimore County, and basically just talks about having the water tested from a lab. If there's a septic system, there is a septic addendum as well that we would complete. Again, typically the repair amount, I typically would say minimum of $1,500 just to be on the safe side, to make sure that if there are repairs that are minor, they're covered. If it's something that's major, then we would go back and negotiate. So those are our home inspection addendum. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, call me anytime. Thanks so much.